Hi, everyone. Welcome to NFL Total Access. Scott Hanson here alongside a couple of former Super Bowl champions. We've got David Carr and Michael Robinson on a day when we have a new rule in the NFL, and it's a big one. The NFL, at the end of the league annual meeting, voted 31-1 to expand instant replay to include offensive pass interference, defensive pass interference, and instances of pass interference that were not called on the field. Coaches can now challenge PI. As to how this will all break down, we'll have reaction in just a moment. But first, the announcement from the league meeting. Roger Goodell and Rich McKay, the head of the competition committee.
Replay has been an important tool for us. And you know, it wasn't able to correct something that we wanted to have corrected in the past. I think that, to me, it was the driving force. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think our clubs, including all our coaches, owners, and everyone else, realized that our job is to get these right. And we should use every available means to get them right. And replay is a great means to be able to do that. Will this solve every problem? Will this get us to perfect? It was the old saying, right? Don't let perfect get in the way of better. And this is a very natural evolution and obviously a very positive thing.
Most of the time was spent on use of helmet, blindside block, and replay. And just spent an ample amount of time reviewing video, watching tape. And I think we came to a good place, something that we just haven't done in the replay system.
This is the first time that we'll have a foul such as DPI, OPI be able to be reviewed when a flag's on the field, or actually cause a flag, throw a flag, whether that's the challenge by the coach all the way up to the last 2 minutes, or whether that's the replay assistant buzzing down, stopping the game, and having Al review back in New York. So in essence, what the rule does is it puts OPI and DPI into our replay system with no change. So the system is exactly the same, but OPI and DPI are now reviewable. And that includes when a flag or no flag. We've never done that before. I think the coaches made some good cases. I think that the committee, I give our committee credit. There, you know, we were at a 4-4 kind of split committee on the idea of putting a flag down. We worked through all of the processes, all the concerns, and we got to 8-0 and made the submission this afternoon, and then it passed in flying colors, 31-1, which for replay, if you guys know the history of replay, 31 votes for us is a lot.
Every club wanted to get, and the league wanted to get these plays right. I mean, replay is to get it right. And ultimately, people compromised, I think, on long-held views because they want to get the system right. They want to get the play right.
This all came after a vote at the end of the annual league meeting in Phoenix, Arizona, which is where we take you now live. Steve Wyche and Lindsey Rhodes standing by. Good evening.
Scott, I got to tell you, after spending a couple of days here in Arizona talking to the people that just took place in this vote, I think this is massive. And not just because of the what that happened, but because of the how it happened. When we showed up here in Arizona, there was no sense that this was going to go through, this rule change, even in the estimation, Steve, of the one person most invested in it happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I arrived here Saturday and did a sit-down interview with Sean Payton, of course, who is still feeling the impact of that NFC Championship game because the Saints lost on that no call against the Rams. Even then, he clearly came here with the mission to make his voice heard. He's on the competition committee. He's had his voice heard for several months on this. But even then, during the interview and post-interview, he said he had no feeling that this was going to go anywhere, that basically he was going to be screaming into a dark hole, but he was going to be screaming nonetheless. Now we fast forward to today. Even this morning at the coach's breakfast, he was still howling into that black hole. He did not think anything was going to happen. As we heard Rich McKay and Roger Goodell say, the competition committee was split 4-4, but through some massaging and leveraging and the rewording of a possible rule change, they got the votes they needed to go where the NFL has not gone before when it comes to review and challenging pass interference, offensive and defensive calls.
And needless to say, Sean Payton feels a little differently this evening.
Anytime, I think, if we have gone through a process like this and really with an open heart tried to look at doing what was right, and after much discussion came to a conclusion where ownership league office, coaches, GMs felt real good about. Certainly fans won knowing that, man, those guys are working, hard at the right decision.
And Sean Payton was not the only coach that was invested in this. A lot of credit was given to Jason Garrett for giving a very impassioned plea in the coaches' meeting. And frankly, all the coaches that I spoke to here seemed like they were all on the same page about wanting to get something done. I was told, we need to fix this. We can't kick this can down the road. And the result here cannot be a Band-Aid solution. It has to actually be something that fixes the problem we're all talking about. That's exactly what they came up with. How did they turn the tide?
Well, another overarching issue is a lot of the coaches feel that the owners don't listen to them. Rules have been changed without the voices of the coaches before, and this is a big bridge that was built between coaches and ownership today. But part of how this came about is Commissioner Roger Goodell. He felt that there needed to be changes made. They had to come out of this meeting with some solution. He leaned on some of the people in the competition committee and owners. There was a lot of jockeying and lobbying that went on right there, to where Goodell even said some people who were pretty firm in their stances, they finally came around to this. And again, that was with the wording of the rule and how they wanted to get it done. But they felt if there's a situation where millions of fans could see on television an egregious violation, that where there was no call, basically telling the fans the sky is green when everyone knows it's blue, that they had to find a way to fix it. And right now, this is a one-year test for a resolution.
For more on how this all went down, let's check in with Ian Rappaport and Judy Batista.
It was a huge philosophical shift here, Ian, for the NFL. Not only are defensive pass interference and offensive pass interference now reviewable by replay, but maybe even bigger is the NFL is now going to allow coaches to challenge non-calls on pass interference, which is something that absolutely nobody saw coming when they arrived in Arizona.
No doubt. Had you asked members of the competition committee on Sunday or Monday, this was simply off the table, not something that was up for debate. But there were two main factors, Judy, that led to really one of the more significant rule changes we've seen in some time. One, Roger Goodell actually addressed the ownership and told them this is something that I believe should happen, is on everyone, all of us, to figure out how to actually do it. Obviously, that created a big movement, momentum toward that. Then, of course, there was the NFL coaches. There was a very heated, emotional meeting earlier in the week. Sean Payton spoke, Bill Belichick, Andy Reid. They wanted this to happen. It was all about making sure the calls on the field were correct, and they helped create what we saw here in Arizona.
Interestingly, the competition committee itself, they are the rules-making body, they were split 4-4 on the proposal that ultimately got approved. That means 4 votes flipped because ultimately they endorsed it 8-0. And as Rich McKay, the chairman of the committee, said, the sausage got made here. So that's where we are from Arizona, a huge rules change for the NFL.
Yeah, as Roger Goodell said, there were some long-held beliefs that were abandoned to make sure that they get it right.
Thank you very much, guys. And so now what? There will be fans that are happy that they made this rule change. There will be fans that are not happy that they made this rule change. Ultimately, though, there are going to be questions that all the fans are going to have about what this will look like on the field.
Yeah, and there's going to be situations that are going to come up that we don't expect from this. But one thing to make abundantly clear, and this is why they were able to get this passed, is this is only going to apply to the pass interference call. There were concerns that by doing a review, you might spot another foul away from the play that had nothing to do with pass interference. Let's say a hold or an illegal lineman down the field. They are going to stick only to the pass interference call. Let's think about the NBA rule when they review what is a 3-point and a 2-point shot. Sure, during that review, they could see that the defensive player may have fouled the offensive player. That does not matter. It's just a decision as to whether it's a 2-pointer or a 3-pointer, and that is how it will stick right here. As we see on this Nicole Roby-Coleman play, there's a head-to-head hit, but it would only be a pass interference call, not the personal foul element to that call.
How does this impact the number of replays that we'll see in a game and how many breaks in action? Because there are going to be fans that say, oh, great, now every play is reviewable. How does this actually play out in that sense?
Well, look, we see this. The coaches can challenge up until the final 2 minutes of the rule, and in the final 2 minutes, it goes to booth replay. The Canadian Football League does have this right now where you can challenge non-calls. You hear a lot about the breaks in action up there, but there's a lot more passing in Canadian football as well. We'll see. That's going to be one thing that's being monitored here, Lindsay, and that is why this is a one-year trial balloon, as we see when rules are implemented typically in the NFL.
We heard Rich McKay say that they didn't want something that maybe wasn't perfect to stop them from not doing anything at all. There are going to be people who find fault with this. I think it's important to point out the NFL has taken a lot of flack in years past for being slow to change. They made this change at the very first possible opportunity they had after that NFC Championship game. And I think that's worth mentioning as we send it back to you in the studio. Scott?
Lindsay and Steve, great reporting out there as it is day one of new challenge rules in the NFL. All right, DC and Emrod, we get a stab at this one ourselves.
Yeah.
Do we like it? Do we love it? Are we neutral about it?
Well, I'm nervous about it.
Yeah.
I think that there's so much that goes into pass interference. Like, what is pass interference? I mean, I think about the contact that wide receivers and DBs have down the field. I feel like in a close, combative game, at the end of the game, when a challenge may be called, I feel like you can call pass interference almost every time, right? So that's what I'm concerned about. And each referee and each crew, they're going to see it differently. You know, Mike Rob, when we're sitting in these meetings before on like a Saturday night, the coach will go through specifically what this crew is more likely to throw
some are
flags
better on personal fouls, some are more on DPI.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, and so if you get a team, if you get a situation like that, then I don't know how that changes the whole landscape of the game. Now you have to think about, well, if I do challenge this, right, is this crew more likely to side with me or no? Like, you don't know because it's not clear. It's not clear what pass interference really is.
It's a judgment call. It's all subjective. And my thing is, what's the standard? Like, what can referees say, okay, I can look at these 4 things, and this is a pass interference no matter what. Like, it's all subjective. And just as you alluded to, me and you can watch 20 plays right now and be split right down the middle very easily. So it's all about coming up with the standard, going into the details of this rule to make sure that even players truly understand it. You know, I don't know, do you get players flopping? No, because they know that there's other people looking at it, not just the guys on the on the field. So I like our ownerships and our head coaches' attempt at trying to do something of the egregious penalties that don't get called, right? But we're going to have to figure out through this year kind of how this rule works for real, how you get into the details. Because, again, without the standard, like an offsides penalty, you know,
it's
the ball
is
fairly clear. He crosses this line, it's a penalty.
Defensive player lines up in the neutral zone. We can see
penalty.
it. They go to
you
the
can
thing.
see
Got
it.
it.
But, you know, I know there's going to be some times where maybe a challenge flag is thrown. You know, one team thinks that it's pass interference, but maybe the referees don't think so.
I can tell you this, what we are going to get is wide receiver goes up to try and make a catch. Ball goes incomplete, but there was contact on the play. That receiver traditionally has stood up and looked for the first official and gone, come on.
Oh, true.
And if he doesn't get it, now that receiver is going to turn to his own head coach
which receivers
and
do
go, coach, throw the flag.
Just
they will
like they
overturn
do.
this on replay.
Just like they do on catches.
Yeah, like it was a touchdown. I
caught it. I run right to my head coach and I say I caught it. Well, hey, coach, he knocked me out of bounds too early or touched me. Yeah,
but they have to also think about it. If it's in the second quarter or late in the third or early in the fourth where you could possibly lose that challenge, you have to be very strategic about it.
Same rules apply. It's 2 challenges with the right to earn a third if you're successful on the first 2 there. You cannot challenge pass interference under 2 minutes. Under 2 minutes in the first half or in the fourth quarter, same rules apply. It has to be a booth review, so they'll be looking for that. But that brings up another one. You're running a 2-minute drill. You're trying to get the next snap off. But if you throw it and your guy got knocked and they didn't get a call, or let's just say,
well, that's a good point because what if I'm the quarterback and I say that's pass interference and now do I wait for the people upstairs or do I just line up and call the next play?
Now that would have to be a live ball instance, so that would probably be more for the defense saying it was offensive pass interference. You know what I mean?
Sure.
If you're waiting for pass interference, it's probably an incomplete pass, which stops the clock anyway.
Right. But you're still hanging on it though. As a quarterback, you're like, wait, that was pass interference. Like, and I'm thinking about that instead of what I should be thinking about is what play to call.
There'll be clock management for the referees almost in that aspect as well. So
how fast they can get through that process.
Bottom line. They did this specifically because of the NFC title game. Do we think we've at least corrected that level of egregious miscall?
Just reading the letter of the law and seeing what happened in the NFC Championship game, yes, one would think that they have created a rule, okay, that would prevent that from happening again. But I do also see that this rule could possibly create other issues
Unintended
as well.
consequences,
Exactly.
as the competition committee likes to talk about it. Okay, much more coming up on this. A little lighthearted reaction. The Saints Twitter feed gets a gold star on Tuesday night. They just put Sean Payton smiling on the sidelines right there. But alas, their season did still come to an end there in the Superdome on the NFC title game. Okay, challenge.
Here we go.
Flag emoji.
Here we go.
Yeah,
The
social
unintended.
media, everyone's got their Chargers. Yeah, game. We agree with that one.
agree.
The LA Chargers Twitter feed right there. How about the wide receivers in the league? Keenan Allen, one of the star receivers in the league.
DB's
DB's going to hate me, man, because the holding has been going on a lot. Has been at
life, and that's business. And I think we as an organization have moved on. I think they as professionals have moved on. And so we're excited about the formulation of our team for 19. They will be missed. But, change is a part of our business. And, we're comfortable with the talent that we have and our plan to add to that talent and develop that talent. And so we look forward to the challenges with the people that comprise our team now.
A lot of talk about Ben Roethlisberger. Do you think he needs to be a better teammate to his teammates?
I have no problem with his play or his leadership. I've heard some of the scuttlebutt in which you mentioned. I'm focused on the guys that are within our group and on our team. I think that's what's appropriate for me. I have no reaction to former Steelers and things of that nature. We were a 9-6-1 football team last year. We all need to look in the mirror in terms of what we do and how we do it, starting with me. And so that's the approach that I'm taking. That's the approach that I'll ask him to take, and not in response to any criticism from the outside or anything of that nature, just doing what's appropriate in terms of us being as good as we need to be. You don't do what he's done at the level that he's done it for the time in which he's done it without responding appropriately to challenges and adversity. That's just in his DNA.
Do you wonder if the way you've handled the locker room and treated players led to some of the things that went on, and do you plan to change it all?
Certainly, I think that reflection is a part of this, man. Particularly when you have failure, and I consider last year a failure. So the reflection and the analysis of how we operate and how I function within that is just a natural point of procedure.
Okay, so the usual strong message there from Mike Tomlin at the breakfast this morning. Yesterday, Juju Smith-Schuster, the new unquestioned #1 wide receiver in Pittsburgh, took to social media. He tweeted out, quote, "I was so blessed to enter the league and play with a Hall of Fame quarterback as a 20-year-old. Ben has taught me so much. He's a true leader, and I can't wait to rock with my guy this season," unquote. Okay,
That's
so
throw me the ball tweet right
solidarity.
That's throw me the ball tweet.
Yeah, you're right. Solidarity, though. The head coach saying, "I'm comfortable with the talent that we have in the locker room. Ben's leadership is just fine. Juju, the #1 wide receiver, and the quarterback seem to be on the same page." Is it possible the Steelers' locker room chemistry in 2019 could be better than it was last year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it could be better. I mean, you're going to miss two fantastic football players. You already had one that didn't play last year because of whatever, and now they're out. They're not there anymore, right? One's in Oakland, one's in New York. But I think that when you talk about NFL football teams, they're very resilient. They tend to stick together really well. Regardless of the guy's leadership ability or his leadership qualities, guys are going to rally around Ben, right? Just like you saw Juju. And when you get in that locker room, you start working with guys, they're going to become a very tight-knit group, right? So maybe he doesn't have the greatest leadership qualities. Who cares? He's a great football player, right? The way he gets guys going is just like this. Like the things that are being said about guys outside your locker room, that tends to rally guys together. So they'll come together. They still have a great offensive line. James Conner played pretty good football last year, right? Juju's a good football player. Washington can step up. There's some pieces there that they can still be pretty good. Don't write the Steelers off just yet. I get a little nervous. We talk about the Steelers maybe dropping in this division to 3rd or 4th.
They weren't 5-11. They were well over 500.
They won 9 games, and they're very disappointed.
They were good. And just going back to something that you said, and I don't know if people quite heard it all the way. You said, maybe he does lack something in the leadership category, and I think that's what this whole issue is all about. I think Ben has a little bit of some competency here. He is a lot of the issues that are going on. Now, it's very hard to find a franchise quarterback. So from an organization standpoint, absolutely. Sure. You have to roll with the quarterback. These guys aren't just walking around every day. These guys just don't grow on trees. There's not a lot of guys that can do what Ben Roethlisberger has done in this league. But, Scott, to answer your question, yes, I think the locker room will be better. But just because your locker room is good don't mean you're going to win games.
True.
It does not mean you're going to win games. You had arguably the best receiver and arguably the best running back on your team, and you let him go. this team will be affected in some way, shape, or fashion.
He just mentioned arguably the greatest wide receiver in the game. Because
I said argue.
No. I'm only We're talking about Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
Antonio Brown took to social media
What'd he say?
earlier today. Now, look, we're putting dots out there. You can connect them if you want to. But remember Juju's tweet. Juju saying, I love Ben, can't wait to rock with Ben. Antonio Brown, in a separate standalone tweet, do not listen to any NFL player who haven't got paid yet. His grammar, not mine. They will do and say anything to make sure they're going to get paid, even if it's compromising integrity or anything. Sad, but
cool,
true.
I thought we was cool.
He left that up for interpretation.
He was talking about Juju,
okay.
man. Just like what I said, Juju put that tweet out there. Man, that's a throw me the ball tweet, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest about the situation. I mean, money, moves guys, okay? And I kind of agree with that tweet a little bit. I mean, yes, it's tough to listen to guys that haven't gotten paid because they're going to do what they have to do to seal the bag,
the company
to get
man.
the money.
Yep.
That's company man. That's a great way to say it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Juju's a company man. But when you put a tweet out there,
there's a lot of truth in that Antonio Brown tweet. Yeah, there's a lot of truth there.
Okay.
Just leave it at that.
I ain't going to say nothing else. I'm going to give myself a tweet.
We were into tweeting and subtweeting. There were once upon a time, Steelers tweets and social media was all about Juju's bike. It was a simpler, kinder time. Yeah. Well, we know who the Steelers franchise quarterback is. Could this guy be a future NFL franchise QB? Daniel Jones at his pro day for today in Durham, North Carolina, Duke's Pro Day. Zion Williamson, not in attendance. But potential first-round quarterback Daniel Jones was throwing it around in front of the NFL scouts. Our Daniel Jeremiah checks in with this Pro Day report presented by Lowe's.
It was a great day here at Duke for Daniel Jones. The talented quarterback started off the day by electing to run another 40. Don't see that very often for a quarterback that's done the 40 at the Combine. He ran twice, ran in the high 4.6s, which is a very impressive time. And then really put on a show during the throwing session of the workout, showed the ability to drive the ball. Saw some of those deep out cuts, saw him drive some of those hole shots. That's what the scouts wanted to see, and he delivered that in a big way. Also showing off the athleticism, a lot of movement today, his ability to throw to the left and to the right very accurately. Very few balls touched the ground today at this workout. Daniel Jones was very impressive. And in talking to people around the program, including his head coach, David Cutcliffe, the same words come up over and over again. Toughness, intelligence, leadership. He checks all those intangible boxes, and that's why I believe when it's all said and done, Daniel Jones will be a first-round pick.
All right, thank you, DJ. For what it's worth, Bucky Brooks has Jones going in the first round to the New York Giants. All four of our mock drafts on NFL.com have the Giants taking a quarterback somewhere in the first round. Now, we know it's Eli coming back for at least one more season this year. He won't have OBJ, but he does have the support of his head coach, Pat Shurmur, earlier today with Andrew Siciliano and Judy Batista.
Nothing went wrong. He's an outstanding player, and we worked well together. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to finish the season, but we really appreciated all the good in Odell, and we were looking forward to moving forward. There was a big list of changes that we've made, and Odell was one of them. And it's the business time of our year. And we've made some changes. There's areas we need to improve. Every player I've ever worked with, when they leave, I wish them the best, and I hope he goes to Cleveland and helps them win a bunch of games. And but we feel like we got good value in return. I think I've got this weird, assessment that that trades can be good for both teams. We felt like we got good value. They're getting an outstanding player, and we move forward.
Dave Gettleman has said that he wouldn't mind using the Kansas City model. That is, bringing a younger quarterback behind Eli, groom him, give him time, eventually move him in. If you go down that road, could we see that quarterback on the field this year, or are we committed to Eli being the quarterback for all of 2019?
Yeah, I think what's important, there's modeling, I guess. I've been around a few different ones. Doug Peterson, who just rolled by here, was our starter.
He rolled by,
for eight games before Donovan McNabb played. You had Sam Bradford that played his first game in St. Louis. There's been other young players that have had different amounts of time before they play. I think the important thing is we recognize that Eli's closer to 40 than 20. We recognize there might be a new quarterback in the building. What's important for Eli to do is become the best Eli he can be, train just like he does. He's not responsible to train the next guy. It's the next guy that comes in, which includes Kyle Lauletta. It's their responsibility to realize what he does is right and learn from him. And so that's sort of the way I'm looking at it. And, then you always play the best players. And then we move forward from there.
All right, Pat Shurmur has to be a little PC there. Some, keep the pre-draft smokescreen maybe up a little bit.
It's a great way to look at it.
All the mock drafts have them taking a quarterback in the first round. Is Eli's eventual replacement in this draft?
Well, I think time will tell that. I think they will draft a quarterback with one of their 2 first-round picks. But when I was at the Combine, David, and just being around the guys on the field, we know Kyler Murray did not throw. It just didn't seem like any dominant personalities there. Guys would throw the ball. I really thought Dwayne Haskins had the best arm talent, but after they would throw, he looked like they would want to go hide under a tree or something, right? It wasn't like some of the other first-round quarterbacks that we've seen compete at the Combine, being very excited, very enthusiastic.
Didn't see an alpha out there?
Yeah, I just didn't see an alpha. So I just look at what the New York Giants did by allowing Odell Beckham to go out of that building. It seems like they've created a situation for a young quarterback. Think about this, guys. Eli Manning just doesn't have the personality to be able to, I don't want to use the word control a guy like Odell Beckham, but to be able to always get him to do what you say, so to speak, from the quarterback. Manage the situations, right? And if you bring in a young quarterback, Odell Beckham is one of the best players in the National Football League. His influence can be a lot. So I think they've already created the environment for a young quarterback.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that environment is crucial for a young quarterback. Quarterback room is important for a young quarterback. Yeah. So Eli Manning being in that quarterback room with that young guy, I think it's going to be a good thing. I've been in that quarterback room with Eli. He's fantastic. He's just an extension of the coaching staff. So whether he's trying to get himself prepared or he's trying to prepare the whole room, it doesn't change his ability to move forward. So it's going to be it'll be smooth regardless if they bring in here. I agree with your assessment though on these quarterbacks this year. You don't really see that guy that kind of stands out that's going to take over a locker room. But when I saw Eli for the first time, I didn't see that either. And going into New York before I got there, all the talk was, well, he's not a very vocal leader. He's not this guy. But what he does do is he works hard, right? Yeah. And he goes to work and he does everything to a fine detail, and that starts to rub off on guys. That's leadership, right? That can be leadership above and beyond vocal. So I see a Daniel Jones. Like, you take a guy like Daniel Jones who threw the ball well today. He's one of those 4 quarordbacks or 3 quarterbacks that could be a New York Giant.
He looks like Eli, man.
He talks like Eli, same mannerisms.
Just
right?
like him.
Can you give Eli face?
I don't know. That's impressive. Right, that's rare, okay? But he has a lot of the same characteristics, and we say, just like you said, there's not a big leadership thing there, but I think what he does bring is a lot of the same things that Eli brings. He's a detail, right? He's going to work hard. He's going to do everything properly. And then guys are going to gravitate and say, this guy cares about what he's doing. He's a true professional. We can build off that. So
in the last 40 years of the Giants' draft history, they've taken a quarterback in the first round once. In 40 years. That was the Eli Manning draft.
Wow,
they drafted Phillip Rivers, but obviously the trade on draft day. Let that wash over you. Phil Simms was the previous one back in 1979. Okay, we mentioned Odell Beckham. He got a FedEx from Nike today.
Okay.
My goodness.
Posted on Instagram here, the cleats for the upcoming season. We assume warm-up cleats. Can't wear those in the game unless my cleats, my
y'all really think he'll wear
my cleats. Do you like them? They're hot. No?
Yeah, they are hot, man.
Okay.
I'm more of a darker cleat colors guy, but it's all
He's got
good,
something for you there.
There you
dark
go.
Blue.
Get him
All right. As for OBJ's new head coach, Freddie Kitchens, at the coach's breakfast today, he said that he still hasn't met with Odell since he's become a Brown, but he says when he does meet him, his first words could be, "I love you." He also said this about the star wide receiver.
Listen, Odell's a 26-year-old man. He doesn't need a babysitter. He doesn't need that. He needs somebody to support him. He's been a great player for a long time, has not been on very good teams. So just because you're a great player doesn't mean your team's going to be great. So what we got to do is immerse him in the plan as a player, as a person, and we got to start building a team. And that's what we're going to do. I'm never going to use the media to draw a line in the sand with a player, okay? But again, his life was turned upside down 2 weeks ago. He had a lot of, up until 2 weeks ago, he thought his first reporting date was mid-April. Now, in saying that, I know just from getting to know him, I know he wants to get there with his teammates So I can promise you he's trying everything he can to be there on April 1st.
So, Scott, Odell Beckham Jr. heard the comments about Freddie Kitchens wanting to tell him that he loved him upon first meeting him, whenever that happens. Kitchens went on to say that he also was going to ask him how to catch a ball with one hand. So this is OBJ's response to that. Crying, laughing emoji, done and done. I love you. Also, lesson coming. Something tells me that Gerald McCoy will not like what he hears from his head coach today quite as much. Bruce Arians saying of the defensive tackle that he's not as disruptive as he once was. And if he is here, he will be our starting 3 technique. That is not all Arians said this morning at the breakfast. I also asked him about his now slightly larger quarterback. Jameis Winston, 250 pounds. Is that a good idea?
He's skinny. He looks great. I mean, I was kind of shocked when he said it. Like, how do you weigh 250? I mean, you look fantastic. And he was out here for our golf tournament Saturday, and it looks great. I mean, he works so hard. So yeah, that's not a problem.
How does that work in your offense?
Well, we're not running the option, so he's okay. But he's still a great scrambler. If it affects that part, we'll change it. But I don't see that affecting right now. He looks lighter, leaner. It looks really good.
What about the weapons around him this year? You lost some big names in free agency as far as and trade, as far as wide receiver position in particular jumps out at me. How do you feel like you are in that regard?
Oh, I think we're fantastic. Brashard Perriman was a great pickup for us. We've got a couple young guys I really like. They're already on the roster, but with Brashard and Chris Godwin, I think is going to be one of those 100-catch guys coming up now. And Mike, we're as good as anybody, I think. And then with those 2 tight ends, it's really special.
How about running back?
I love Peyton Barber. I mean, he's my style. He's my kind of guy. Pound it downhill. Is he going to go 60? Maybe if our wide receivers block for him, but he's going to pound it and be physical and set the tone for our offense.
What do you think is a realistic expectation for you guys this year in terms of you being able to implement and get the team the way that you want it to look? Is that something where you expect to hit the ground running, or is it realistic to expect there to be some sort of learning curve?
No, every year's the same. We have one team, one cause. That's the Super Bowl, and win it. So if we're playing for anything less than that, why are we playing? I don't care just because we were 5-11 last year. You know, we can get into the playoffs, and if you get into the playoffs, you can win.
This play, if we ever see it again, will be reviewable. The NFL voting today in Arizona at their annual meeting, 31-1 to modify the rules to add pass interference, both called and not called, to the list of reviewable plays. It is a massive shift in philosophy for a league that has not wanted to create additional plays that could lead to flags. Here's how we got there. Here's the Commissioner, Roger Goodell.
Replay has been an important tool for us. And, you know, it wasn't able to correct something that we wanted to have corrected in the past. I think that, to me, it was the driving force. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think our clubs, including all our coaches, owners, and everyone else, realized that our job is to get these right. And we should use every available means to get them right. And replay is a great means to be able to do that. Will this solve every problem? Will this get us to perfect? It was the old saying, right? Don't let perfect get in the way of better. And this is a very natural evolution and obviously a very positive thing.
Most of the time was spent on use of helmet, blindside block, and replay. And just spent an ample amount of time reviewing video, watching tape. And I think we came to a good place, something that we just haven't done in the replay system.
This is the first time that we'll have a foul such as DPI, OPI be able to be reviewed when a flag's on the field, or actually cause a flag, throw a flag, whether that's the challenge by the coach all the way up to the last 2 minutes, or whether that's the replay assistant buzzing down, stopping the game, and having Al review back in New York. So in essence, what the rule does is it puts OPI and DPI into our replay system with no change. So the system is exactly the same, but OPI and DPI are now reviewable. And that includes when a flag or no flag. We've never done that before. I think the coaches made some good cases. I think that the committee, I give our committee credit. We were at a 4-4 kind of split committee on the idea of putting a flag down. We worked through all of the processes, all the concerns, and we got to 8-0 and made the submission this afternoon, and then it passed in flying colors, 31-1, which for replay, if you guys know the history of replay, 31 votes for us is a lot.
Every club wanted to get, and the league wanted to get these plays right. I mean, replay is to get it right. And ultimately, people compromised, I think, on long-held views because they want to get the system right. They want to get the play right.
A lot of people wanted to get it right. Most notably, I think, the head coaches who voted 32-0 in order to get a proposal in front of the ownership group. They all came to the conclusion that they wanted a massive change to be made. And I thought it was interesting the way that they seemed to consolidate their collective power to get behind this and really push something through. How impactful do you think that was in terms of getting this done?
Well, I think it was pretty seismic, just in terms of to get 32 competitive coaches. I mean, these guys play against each other on the same page. To advance a rule or the thinking for a rule that could have significant impact positively and negatively. But here's the other big part of this. They finessed this with the owners and the competition committee over Monday night and Tuesday morning. This was almost like a labor negotiation where both sides decided they were not going to let this go. A lot of times at these league meetings, they'll have this discussions and they'll say, okay, you know what? That's a great idea. We're going to table this to a later discussion. No, both sides said we are going to come out of here with some sort of solution that either we like or we don't like, but there will be a finite answer. The fact that they were able to work together like this was a huge bridge that was built.
And I think it's interesting that there was an all-hands meeting called for today, the meeting in which this vote actually took place, that was optional for coaches. And how many coaches showed up for that?
That would be 31, Lindsay.
31, except for the one coach who had already flown home this morning for totally different reasons. So they did not hit the golf course. They did not find other things to do. This was a priority for them. They went in there, and I think part of it, and I don't know this, was to hold people accountable. I'm going to be here, so if you don't do anything, you're going to have to do it in front of us. One of the owners who I think also had a major effect in this getting done was Jeffrey Lurie, the Eagles owner, who we caught up with afterward.
We deal in a sport we love. Our fans and all of us are incredibly passionate. We invest so much blood, sweat, and tears. And to have a key game, whether it's a playoff game or just any game during the regular season, come down to a human mistake. The referees are doing the best they can. They're not going to be perfect. None of us are. How should they be? You need a backup system. The technology's there, and it's about time, and just pleased to play a part in having an important change to our system there.
A very interesting move for the NFL today. How does it open the door to more expansion of replay?
Yeah, we talked about some of the owners who kind of came off the old guard approach and decided to embrace things moving forward. We also heard Roger Goodell and Rich McKay, the head of the competition committee, saying, hey, look, they'd be naive to think that this is not going to continue to expand replay with burgeoning technology. So this is part of just another level of this. Maybe it'll end up with Bill Belichick's proposal he's had for years. Just let everything be challenged.
I don't know that that's going to happen anytime soon, though. There will be another meeting in May. We'll see if they can get something else massive accomplished then. Again, the annual meeting here in Phoenix is wrapped up a day early. They were able to get everything done that they wanted to get done, and now they go back to the business of preparing for the draft. And we go back
to on Sunday of Gronk's retirement. Cynthia Freeland went into the lab to crunch the numbers to see just how much of a subtraction this is. He's a future Hall of Famer, so you know it's a big loss. But what area of the Patriots offense will miss 87 the most?
You know, I was a little surprised to find out that of the 10-plus yard air yard targets last season, Gronk led the team with 41. So he was kind of their deep threat, if you think about it. Really, it's his versatility. You also saw him as a great run blocker. In the playoffs, they averaged almost 162 rushing yards per game. A lot of that's because of Gronk's ability to block. And, of course, He's that deep red zone threat, so the area 20 yards to 39 yards, he's their main go-to guy.
And not to mention a guy that when they needed that key first down, it was him or Edelman that Brady was going to look at.
Well, absolutely.
Well, you mentioned red zone right there. You know, I'm partial to red zone numbers right
why?
here. Well, you know, I
don't know why.
I'm having flashbacks right now. In the red zone, he was always a big target, but is that where they will miss him or how they will miss him the most?
You're maybe saying that, okay, Josh McDaniels has been sort of planning for this, right? Because last season he was only targeted 8 times in the red zone. Of course, 3 of those were receptions, only 1 touchdown. In years past, this number's been a lot bigger. So for some context, in 2017, that number was 21 targets, which led the team by 9. So it's a lot different. And yes, of course, he changes the shape of the defense, so the ability of other players to get theirs in the red zone. But it's ultimately like maybe those targets are something that Josh McDaniels has sort of already started thinking about.
I think the computers are even among those of us who will miss the personality of Gronk, too.
Of course.
Right?
Absolutely. What's not to miss about that?
One of the most colorful characters of all time. He played in 4 Super Bowls, was on the roster for 5. In those 4, though, the Patriots were 2-2. So he's a Super Bowl champion, but wasn't always a guaranteed
Only 50%.
guy to get the ring in the biggest game of the year. Cynthia, thanks.
Thank you.
Up next on NFL Total Access, the NFL says it's all about getting it right. Well, it is a new day for instant replay. Back out to Lindsay and Steve one last time. Lindsay, you get the final word on the final day of the annual league meeting.
Yeah, I'm struck by how some things change and some things stay the same. Bill Belichick at the breakfast this morning stood up for 43 minutes, took over 100 questions, said 1,700 words total.
Well, Lindsay, I got here, and Cliff Kingsbury, the Arizona Cardinals coach, left the door open for Josh Rosen to be traded. And today at the breakfast, Browns coach Freddie Kitchens says when he sees OBJ, the first thing he's going to say is, I love you.
See, he just said more words than Bill Belichick. I wasn't counting, but I think, Scott.
Nothing but love from back here in the Los Angeles studios, gang. For Lindsay and Steve and all of us here at NFL Media, thanks for watching NFL Total Access.